This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, and SAE Institute. You're hearing my voice right now mixed through iZotope, Ozone, and Velvet on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Make sure to get my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com, and please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. And please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel because it's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
Like I've created a bunch of different decks where, like as an example for a mix prep, I had a button where I'd bring all my tracks to the right of my template. I put them in the order that I'd highlight all the drums.
You have to drag them over one at a time and organize and all that. Time consuming.
Yep. So for this guy, what I can do, if I bring in a track, I could go and I think I got it down to 5 minutes on a mix prep, even with just SoundFlow. But you highlight all your tracks, and what I had set up for my specific template is I'd hit a button, and let's say you had 20 drum tracks. It would color code them, set the routing input to nothing. It would set the output to my drum bus. It would create a VCA called drums if it wasn't already created, and then I would move it to a drum folder that it would create as well, and then it would close that folder up, and that was with one button within SoundFlow.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. From synths to strings to studio guitars, Complete 15 has it all. Native Instruments' flagship bundle gives you everything you need to create pro music in any genre, with cutting-edge instruments like Contact 8, Massive X, battery, guitar rig, and session guitarist for lifelike electric and acoustic guitar parts. Use our code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com or get started with Complete Start totally free. Howdy Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is a 25-year veteran producer, mix and mastering engineer based in Monument, Colorado. He got his start running TBR, aka the Basement Recording Studio, for 7 years before moving to Denver in 2007, where he balanced a day job with mixing by night. That dedication led to the creation of Monument Sound, a private studio set 7,400 feet up in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. That's 7,400 feet above sea level, Rockstars. 2022, he leveled up his studio with the Dolby-approved Atmos mixing room, allowing him to deliver immersive three-dimensional mixes to help artists compete in today's evolving audio world. While he's worked with artists all over the globe across many different genres, his heart is in rock, pop, and country. And when he's not mixing, he's lending his post-audio talents to indie film projects. Now, I met Chris through a SSL group and was super impressed with how dialed in his mixing setup was. So please welcome Chris Andrews to Recording Studio Rockstars. Chris, my friend, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Been ready for months.
Awesome. Well, it's great to connect with you. Yeah, I guess it was quite a while ago that we've started chatting and then finally lined up an interview. So I'm glad to have you here, man. Give us a little bit of an introduction into who you are, and give us kind of the brief arc of, if you want to say where you're at. I know you're up pretty high. I was surprised when it said 7,400 feet is in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Because to me, I'm like, where's the oxygen mask,
Yeah, so Monument, Colorado is pretty much directly between Denver and Colorado Springs. So we're just about 2 exits north of what you would see as the Air Force Academy, is right next as our next door neighbors.
Right.
So
okay.
My house is actually 7,410 feet in elevation where I sit at my house. So we're on the Palmer Divide is what they call it. And the Palmer Divide, it's a beautiful area. It's a growing area. Sadly, they're putting a lot of like monopoly houses out here, but I've been out here. This is year 18. I moved from Washington, DC back a long time ago. That's where TBR studio was. And it was a basement recording studio in my townhouse in Burke, Virginia, which was super fun. The neighbors probably hated me because it was loud all the time, but it had its day. It was a good time. Back when the 002s were big is when I was really kicking it off with Pro Tools.
007 with the 002s.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And and I so a little bit about, I started recording when I was a kid. I think I was 14 or 15 living in Cleveland, Ohio. And I am still friends with the guy that got me into it. Chris Keffer is his name. And he runs an amazing studio in Cleveland called Magnetic North Studios. And he's a good guy. He actually just went Atmos recently too, but he's got this fantastic studio. And when we were kids, we all went in there, and he, I still joke with him today because he had, I think it was 10 or 15 Nakamichi tape decks all streamed together, and he would put all the cassettes in and hit play, and it would dub them all out. So we'd go do our demo tapes and stuff, and the
awesome.
rock bands. And so I started playing. I'm a guitar player, obviously, and started playing when I was a kid, and started playing clubs when I was 15. Had some fun back in the day in Cleveland. We got to open for some pretty cool bands. The band I was in I listened to it today and I laugh. Even it's historic fun, but absolutely horrid if you listen to it today. But we had a good time. But I mean, we got to play with, like, honestly, like my joking claim to fame is we opened for Tool in 1992 in this tiny little club, and all the high school kids, like, I had honestly no idea who they were. At the time, like Opiate was just out, and it was like, hey, we're playing with Tool. And they came in and played a show, and it was the scariest show I think I've ever seen in my life. But just imagine like a small club of maybe like 500 people, and that's where they were. And then like bands like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, we opened for them because we were like a funk band meets like we had our singer was a sax player. We had a trumpet player. We had a drummer that was real big into Primus. I was a 80s wanker kid that played Steve Vai and Mr. Big all the time. And then we had a bass player. Did you have
the Steve Vai Ibanez guitar? Was that your style?
I have two. I have two of them right here still.
With the handle on top?
Yep. Exactly. And so I have a bunch of guitars, and so we had a good time. And then I went to college, and then I went into the Air Force, and the Air Force, I was an Intel guy, and that was 96 to 2000. So like still the Saddam regime, basically. Right. So we were deployed quite a bit in those 4 years. And then I got out, and I was still in college. I kind of did college for a long time, and finally finished when I was 37, I think, is when I finally decided to finish it up. And when I was in DC, I was going to college for animation and graphic design at the time. And I was like, I need to get something set up so I can do my audio work. Right. So we're using like Maya and Lightwave and all that stuff back then. And I thought I was going to live in California and be an animator. And it never really, I was like, there's no way I'm moving to California. So I bought a 002 and I started recording. And I actually found some pictures. I'll have to send them to you. They're pretty wild, of like a basement room that had a built-in desk that I built it myself out of like Home Depot wood. And it had a 24-inch CRT monitor and two 19-inch monitors on the side. And it had the 002 in the middle. And then I was working at the time as a defense contractor, and I started making money, and I was like, well, I'm going to go buy everything that I ever wanted. So I started the Eventide, and then I, bought all these mics and started building it up. And I was doing like little voiceover things, and my buddy's like, why don't you start recording bands? And so sure enough, this band shows up with their drums, and we put it in the basement. And fortunately, like the walls on each side of this basement were like 3-foot firewalls. So it wasn't terrible for the neighbors, but it was definitely loud. And we started recording, and it just kind of built and built and built and built. And I mean, there was zero room for me. It was the worst mix room in the planet. I think I had Mackie 628s at the time. And I still have some of the effects. I sold a bunch of stuff. I'll get to that later, but I still have all my effects because I'm like, who doesn't want an Eventide? Like a real one's awesome.
Yeah. What do you have? The 3000 or something like that?
Yeah, it's the H3000 DSX, and then I've got a PCM90 and was that the
hopefully we'll still hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I've got the H3000 DSX, and then a PCM90 and and a TC Electronic M3000 and just a bunch of stuff that
they're super fun. I mean, it's funny for those who haven't had a chance to use outboard stuff like that. I mean, it's easy to think, oh, well, once you go digital in a computer, you just recreate everything in the computer. But there's still something about using outboard effects gear, even the digital stuff, that's just got a cool sound when you get a chance to use it, It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's cool, man. So, wow. So you went and did the military Air Force. So were you flying?
No, I was intel working primarily with F-16s and then pararescue guys. I did get to fly in the back seat of an F-16 a few times, which was pretty cool. I got sick every single time and essentially earned my helmet bag because of that.
Wow.
I puked in it and they said, you just go ahead and keep that. But still have a lot of really close friends. And obviously my day job is still defense work. For 25 years, I've supported a bunch of those 3-letter agencies out there and all as a contractor. It pays the bills and affords healthcare. This has always been my passion, and I get the work that I get when I can, and I enjoy doing it and trying to make it like. I think the benefit working with me is I can spend the time on it, knowing obviously there's probably usually timelines all the time with labels and whatnot, but I can spend the time on your project as an indie artist to make it the best I can possibly make it without charging you an arm and a leg, because this has never 100% paid the bills for me, but it's awesome. And I love it. I absolutely love doing it. And it's just been a passion since I was a kid. So I'll do it forever,
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any thoughts for anybody who's sort of beginning their journey? I know this is right off the bat in the podcast, but as somebody who did some music and then chose a career path and then is coming back to the music, or has just kept the music, I guess, the whole time. But it does sound like you're really excited about just doing more and more music as well. Do you have any thoughts on that path as opposed to, one that you think would have been different?
You mean for people that are trying to get into this for the most part?
Yeah, people who are maybe thinking, should I focus on music and audio, or is it okay to go, pick up a job and keep doing the audio kind of stuff? Because you just got the experience with it.
I think the big thing is people with kids. If you're a person like, I'm going to go do music, and maybe your wife works, maybe she doesn't, maybe there's not a wife present, but the big thing I would guess would be healthcare is a lot, right? Like that's a big deal with healthcare. But I mean, I always tell people like, do what you love. Like I don't want to say I love defense work. It pays the bills, right? It does that. I've had a lot of very cool experiences with my day job. I've had a great amount of fun with this as well with the band. So that's a hard question. I would tell people don't go in debt, right? I guess sometimes I used to go up to University of Denver and help out with a professor up there, like with his class. They had the audio production school. And I would go talk to them and like do like mix revisions or mix reviews and stuff. Not that I'm the perfect person in the world, but it was really fun to see these kids. And you're like, why would you do that? Like, I want to go spend money. I'd love to buy this, 1176, but I don't have $1,900 or whatever to get a real one. I'm like, okay, don't use the school, like go to a studio that has it. Don't make yourself go in debt and be smart about it, because we all know this is a deep, dark rabbit hole of expense.
Right. Once you get one thing, you're like, ooh, I'm ready I need one of those too. Well, I imagine that you found yourself in a career path that gave you some income where you could actually accumulate a studio ahead of when the music was ready to pay for the studio. I used to always try to teach myself. It took me a while, but I started thinking about my studio in terms of, if a piece of gear arrives in my studio and I'm buying it, I'm not really buying it. A future client of mine is buying it. It's a way to think about it. It's like, does that artist that I'm going to work with, can they afford the 1176 by paying for the studio time and stuff like that? We don't have to go too deep on the topic, but it's just cool to hear you talk about it.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, you have put together a beautiful studio. So give us kind of give us a little description of where you're sitting. I'd love to get maybe, if you want to even, it'd be really cool to just get a kind of a later get a video tour of the studio, and we can post that separately on the YouTube channel. But in the meantime, if you want to give us a verbal description of like, what are your surroundings? Because I can see in the video, there's some cool ass looking speakers behind you, and the room looks like a cool spot, you know?
Yeah. So the old studio, back from 2007 to 2020, we were literally a mile and a half down the road, and I had a multi-tracking lower level of the house. The whole house was a studio. So I had a drum room, I had a guitar room, a drum room, a small vocal booth, and a control room, and a storage room that acted as a rack where you could literally walk behind it and get it. You didn't have to unrack anything. It was perfect. Our kids grew up a little bit and they were getting too close to the road. So we found a house during COVID, and this is where we landed. The idea that you don't see is out on the back property, we have a 35 by 35 by 20 trailer garage. And when we bought the house, that was going to be the studio. But then COVID kicked off and everybody wanted your firstborn child. So I ended up moving here and setting up, and I had the gear at first. And then, like you were saying, like 2022, late 2021, I decided to sell everything that I had for the most part, minus a couple pieces of things that I covet a lot. And I went to Atmos. So this room is about 16 by 17. It's not ideal, perfect by any shape or form in a studio control room, but it works really well. It has a focal array of twins. I was working with Josh Eastock before he's no longer working for Focal. I hear he's moved on and is working with not Genelec, with
Neumann.
I forget who he's.
I think Neumann. He's with Neumann.
Right, yes, Neumann.
Yeah. In fact, I'm having lunch with him later this week. So.
Tell him I said hello. So he got me convinced to go with the twins because I already had twins. I'd been working on them for probably 9 years. And I got a deal with the guys at Wind Over the Earth up in Boulder. He said, hey, I have all these speakers. And so I got a deal on the twins. And then I got the new solo. So I have the ST6s, I think is what they're called, for the heights. And then I've got 2 sub 6s on the sides. So I kind of went that Carl Tatz mentality. I've always been a big fan of Carl Tatz. I'd love to have one of his rooms, but I just can't fathom the expense right now. And then ironically behind me, you can't see it behind the couch, but I have a sub 12, which is their giant 135 pound, like subwoofer LFE thing. So that's my dedicated LFE channel. So 714 and dedicated subs left and right. And then they're all run off of a Grace M908. So I have a 908 loaded from the guys up in Boulder or Leadville is where they are. They're fantastic. Yeah. They really help me out all the time. If their customer support's the greatest thing I've ever experienced. You call them anytime, they're like, oh yeah, let's figure this out. So they've been amazing.
They're fantastic. Grace is awesome. I'm actually a big fan of Grace design, and I have, the 801 and the M102 mic pre in the studio, and they just sound so amazing good. So I'm actually looking
at... The 801's the 8-channel pre, right?
Yeah, the 8-channel pre is really good. That just sounds really, really good. And I'm actually looking into the M701, the new sort of like mothership that'll do 64 IO.
They tried to sell that to me the other day. So, but yeah, then I've just got all my guitars, and all of the acoustic panels that you can kind of see are from a company that I think they're still around, Ready Acoustics. I've been with them for a long time. I've got white and red ones that I've had. We did some stuff years ago, and it's like a studio sponsor, I guess, if you'll call it that. Cool. So it's been kind of cool. And then yeah.
What
so
about
then I've got
you've got like a great setup, like with the faders in front of you, and I think you said you're using a Sigma or something as well, right?
Yeah. So I kept the SSL. So this is just the main desk. Actually, this was an old desk from Airshow Mastering that I picked up when David Glasser was actually selling it. So it was actually David's old desk in his B room or whatever. And so it's funny is I have my converters behind it. So I've got 4 Lynx Auroras, like the old Lynx Aurora 16s behind it, and they feed the Sigma directly. So I have the SSL Sigma as my analog summing hybrid setup. And then I've got a 4-channel API 3124 that I've had since like 2002. And then I've got the Burl and then a benchmark ADC1 and DAC1 that I can A/B between the two converters if I want color, if I don't want color.
At iZotope, mixing and mastering just got even smarter. Velvet gives you silky vocals with sibilance, learn, de-essing, dynamic tone shaping, and de-click, all in one plugin. And Ozone 11 now includes clarity, upward compression, and AI-powered stem focus to help you master like a pro. Use code ROCK10 for 10% off Ozone or any of iZotope's incredible plugins at iZotope.com. That's on the input stage of recording stuff. And how often are you doing recording in your space right now? It says, look,
not recording for mixing stereo, for summing down stereo.
Oh,
right?
Got you. It's like your two channels in. Or
yeah, I can more than that. I can switch on my temp. No. So for if I'm mixing stereo, I have it coming in AES. The Sigma comes out and it goes into these for an A and B, and I can actually pick which one I want to go through on my template. So I can go to my A or my B. So I can listen to the burl and go, oh, that's color, or I can go to the benchmark and go, that's pristine.
That's super cool.
So it works out really well.
Let me, before we keep moving too far forward, back up a little bit and just sort of do a verbal, like explain it to a 5-year-old as far as like, because I can keep up with you, but I want to make sure people understand what we're talking about here as far as, what's a Sigma and, what are we talking about? What kind of mixing setup are we talking about?
Sure. So the SSL Sigma is a hybrid analog summing mixer. I've been through quite a bit of them. I had an API back in the day, the DSM setup. Then I went to a dangerous 2-bus, the big one, not the little one. And then I picked this thing up. I've been on this almost 10 years now. So it is a 32-channel analog summing mixer, but it does something a little bit cooler in my mind. They sadly they support it, but they don't support it. It's been kind of discontinued. But it is essentially the guts of the duality? The AWS. Sorry, the AWS console. It's basically the guts. And so what's cool about it is it's 16 stereo pairs. So you have 32 channels. The weird thing about it is if you want to be simplified for the people listening, 32 channels come in, 2 channels go out, and it's stereo. So that's your print track coming back into Pro Tools. Yeah. What I like about this one is it has an A and a B bus built into it. So I can run all of my mix to the A bus, everything but the vocals. And then you can put your vocals on the B bus by itself. And what I did for years, based on my mentor, I'm going to call him Dewey. He said, put all your vocals on the B bus. And what it does is cool. It has an A bus and a B bus, but the B bus sits on top of the A bus. So you can compress the crap out of the A bus and have your B bus do something completely different, and it sits on top of it so it doesn't get affected by what's going on with the music. So it gives that, I used to jokingly call it the Blake Shelton effect, because it was like the vocals were like right here in your face type thing. Because I always think like Blake Shelton's vocals are just like, oh my God, they're like, it's incredible. Like he's in the room with you. So it does that, and then it just goes back into Pro Tools, and I print it, and away we go.
So the SSL Sigma, at the analog summing stage, that's where you're doing some or a significant portion of your parallel compression?
No, not. I never got into the parallel. You can call it that, I guess, but it's like I would have. So when I was in the analog realm, I had specific things, and we can get into that, but it's crazy. I had specific pieces of gear for one thing. Like I would literally buy a distressor just for my kick drum and a distressor for my snare drum. Because the interesting thing about this is if you run it stereo, it's stereo. If you want mono, you lose a channel. So it's some stupid SSL thing, but you would have the left channel as your mono kick drum, and the right channel would just be, it would be nulled out.
So 16 monos or 32 stereo.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, exactly. And so I would always have the music on the A bus and my vocals are on the B bus. So I had that 5.1 SSL compressor that they used to make, the white one that was the the super analog one. And I would have 2 channels going into it. And the bottom channel was my mix and the top channel was my vocal. And you could hit the little button and it would switch the meter because it was only 1 meter, but you'd go to the A and the B. So if you ran it that way, it was running it instead of 5.1, it was running as two stereo SSL compressors, which was awesome. And so I could crush the mix and hit, 4 dB. And then I could go to the vocal and go, I just want a little bit. And it would just feather it in, but it makes it weird. But what's cool about this one is it is analog. It is essentially, the only thing I hated is there's a plugin you put on a fader in Pro Tools. You can put on any aux track. I have a track called Sigma, and it's just there. And it's a 16 channel SSL plugin that basically has 16 faders. And you go into your artist mix and you hit like select and flip and this other button, and it flips the plugin into fader mode, and you mix with the SSL. So you're
mixing on the SSL plugin instead of on the Pro Tools fader.
Right. And so you would set it all 100% to read and like set all your automation lanes and turn on every automation lane. And then you'd go into that plugin and hit read, and you'd automate that plugin, and it would move. You'd see the faders move and you'd see the levels, but it lets you push it like a console. You could just crush it up and it would be great.
Well, doesn't it also give you the ability to put analog outboard gear in the signal path if you wanted to? Like on a traditional console, you'd have an insert and you could run it out to compressors and EQs and then automate the fader at the end of the thing. That's sort of what that Sigma did, right?
Yep.
Well, and that's very cool.
Too, so it was awesome.
So we don't have to go too deep into that because, it may be, it's very cool to hear it, but it may also be fun because I know you do so much cool stuff in the digital space that obviously is more accessible to everybody who's listening. So they might love to hear you talk about, how you're integrating faders into your system. Because are you using the SSL UF8 as well and the UC1 and that sort of stuff? Or what other tools do you have in front of you?
So directly in front, I have a UC1 and a UF1. I don't have the UF8s because they don't work with Yukon. And I'm a huge Yukon guy. So I have 2 artists, like old school artist mix units. And they've been holding up. They work well. And then I've got a little tablet that I have directly above the Grace that is the Yukon app, the Pro Tools app.
Right,
and
the
so
control.
I've got so I got a bunch of buttons.
So those artists,
so
rock stars, if you, again, we're referencing a piece of gear that maybe is discontinued, but the S1 would be today's equivalent of the artists, right?
Yeah. And I would get 2 of those, but they don't
mix setup. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to have 2 of them, but they don't fit in a desk properly. And this is like super ergo. So it works well.
No, that's cool. I'm not critiquing your setup. It's more like I'm trying to reference it to things where people are like, okay, as I learn this or I hear, the stuff you're going to describe for your workflow, it's cool to realize, I can still recreate that myself. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, so the Yukon is that's the language that Pro Tools uses to talk to, Pro Tools approved, interfaces and that sort of thing. And then Huey, the human user interface, is sort of the universal one that goes all the way back to Mackie days. And with my SSL UF8, the 8-channel fader, and I think with just about any other MIDI pack fader thing, it can talk to Pro Tools, but only using the Huey version. Whereas with the Yukon, you get a lot more in-depth control. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, I've got all kinds of macro buttons and it does things. And I'm a big fan of VCA spill. So I have a whole session prep where when I get it in, I bring it into SoundFlow and I hit buttons and it moves stuff and does everything. And have you been into that, the app Forte? Have you seen that thing going around?
So I've got it on my questions because I saw your video and I was what is that? So let's just go there now. So here's my question to you. Chris Andrews, tell us, what is Forte AI?
So, it was funny. It's an Italian company, and I have nothing associated with them except I was helping with some of their beta stuff, essentially. And I thought it was a fake company at first. You get all these Facebook ads and stuff popping in your feed, and you mentioned black horse, and next thing you know, there's horses on your feed or whatever. But they have this app called, and they're building an ecosystem of an input and an import and an export system. So they're building their whole ecosystem. It's an Italian company, super great guys. I've talked to them a couple times now. And for the import, it's amazing. Like they really dialed it in. They took a lot of people's inputs and said, okay, cool. So you open a session. Like I have a template that has the exact same faders. Every time I hit a button, number 9 is my vocal for my effects, for my aux returns, right? So I have the Sigma set up for 16 stereo faders. I have 16 stereo faders in front of me that are the same thing every time, no matter what I do. And I said, it would be really cool if you guys could bring this stuff in and bring it to a routing folder, like move it to a folder, right? So I can get a track and I can say you send me 100 tracks. I go in there and I bring them all in. It will rename it for you. It will go, that's kick drum, but it's named really stupid. So it's going to name it kick.
Wow.
It does an AI thing. And they're still building. I mean, there's still some issues that they're weeding out, but
yeah, but that's all right. We're all used to that now. I think everybody gets the fact that whatever issue you have with the AI tool you tried, next week it's going to be better. And you're going to be like,
yeah,
I forget all about it.
But it's crazy, man. Like you go in there and you tell it, like, I want my drums to be black in color. I want my bass to be this and this. And oh, by the way, I want the outputs to be set to this, because I do some multi-weird bussing and stuff. And then at the end of it, I was like, it'd be really cool if you guys could move it to a routing folder. And what do? They're like, all right, it's done. They did it like a week later. So it will take your stuff, pull it in, color code it, bring it into a session, right? It brings it all in. It just goes dook, 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 and does the thing. And then not only that, you can go, oh yeah, I want that box checked too. It will go through and strip silence all of your stuff all the way down. Just dook, 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 go all the way down and move it. And then put it into your routing folders. Cause I for years didn't use routing folders, and not too long ago, I'm like, right click, convert to routing folder. Oh, that's cool. Let's try that. So then I use that. And what I found out with that is to make stems, it's a hell of a lot easier to have a routing folder where you just go boop and it does your stems.
Right.
So I use Soundflow for Bounce Factory and all that stuff, and a bunch of crazy cool shortcuts for Atmos panning and stuff. But the Forte is really cool. So now they're working on an export feature where it will export your stems based on how you select it too. And it saves it as a template on your stuff. So I have an Atmos import and I have a Chris's dumb mix import or something like that. And it just does it. And you can tell it like, hey, I want this. I work in a layer cake is what I call it. A layer cake at like an object bed, but I call it a layer cake because it's kind of stacked. And I tell it, I want this on layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and it will put the objects there, and it gets me a rough start where I want to go. But it's incredible. I literally prepped a mix, I think, with everything in it in like 3.5 minutes getting stuff in.
I haven't done Atmos mixing, but I can imagine it would take me a lot longer than 3.5 minutes to even prep a stereo.
No,
mix,
I'm saying for stereo mix was about 3.5 minutes for the stereo mix. Still same scenario, but
that's amazing.
It grabs it. Like I would demo it. Seriously, download the demo and try it for 10 days with get the dumbest session you can get and test it. So
now does it put plugins on tracks that you might want to, or does it bring them in without plugins and then you just create your routing to go through a processing chain for stuff the way you like?
Yes. So I have, with my setup, I have it to where all of my Sigma faders, during COVID, when I sold all the gear, I basically replicated everything as close to possible from the gear that I had to what I was mixing with. So my distressors, my Chandler stuff that I had, and a bunch of crazy stuff. I replicated that so I can do it in the box through the Sigma. So I mix through the Sigma, but I come into an aux track or out of an aux track that has all the plugins that are replicating. And then basically the only thing I'm honestly putting on individual tracks these days is just the SSL channel strips. And I'm using that as my we'll have to talk about that. It's pretty crazy, but I just, everything across all of it. So to answer your question, when I bring it in, what I generally do is I'll get all the tracks into their folders, and I highlight all of them, and I hit one button with the Soundflow, and it goes boop, and it puts the SSL channel strip across every track. And then I'll hit another one if I want it. Sometimes I'll run the fab filter on top just to look at some of the crap that I want to get rid of that the SSL
right,
might
because you
not
get
grab.
the FFT or whatever, the frequency analyzer as well.
Yeah. So, but the main dirt of all of my mix stuff is going through the aux tracks routing, and then through the mix bus, which my mix bus is way too stupid. I have a buddy of mine that's like, dude, just go simple. And I'm like, I don't know. This is what I know. This is what I like. This is what I do.
Well, the nice thing about what you're describing too is that I imagine when you're looking at all the tracks for a session, you're looking at a whole bunch of the tracks that came into you. They don't have many plugins on them, so there's not a whole lot to click on or sort out there. They're going to a folder track, which the folder track, is that already existing in your Pro Tools template, or is that one that Forte is making too? So maybe the folder track has some plugins on it or something like that if you wanted. And then the rest of all the plugin complexity is on the right side of your template where the aux returns are and stuff like that.
So it will start. So the thing I learned about routing folders, and I honestly didn't know this because I didn't use them, is if you don't have audio in them and you bounce something, even if it's routed, right? If you have, so say you have a routing folder and you have all your tracks to the right of the routing folder, not in it, but they're routed to it, you'll hear it play. But if you try to go bounce it, since it's not physically in the folder, it will not bounce. And I didn't know that.
Interesting. I didn't know that either.
I had no idea. I was like, why is it not bouncing? And then I went, and I drug it all in there. And what I like about it is you'll have a session that goes massive to just like 16 faders, and then you put it in another folder. So my session, when it starts a template, it's literally like 5 faders. Then you hit a button, it goes blah, and it opens up. So it's pretty cool.
Dreaming of a career in audio or the entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs where you'll learn on professional-grade gear with industry pros, learning through real projects, not just lectures. Explore studio production, live sound, audio for film, and a whole lot more. Or take the entertainment business program to learn about contracts, promotion, and more. With diploma, associate, and bachelor's programs, there's a path for you. Book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Yeah, well, I like when you're actually mixing, really what I feel like I want to see most of the time is I want to see the audio tracks, because that's what I'm thinking about in my head. Mm-hmm. And I want to know where to go find something so I can turn it up and grab the fader and move it around.
Yes.
And, if I'm diving in to manipulate something, then then I'll like scope out the plugins and, tweak stuff. But a lot of times it's set it and forget it. And it's cool to hear you talk about putting the SSL channel strip plugin on the audio tracks, because I've been using that like crazy and I find it's incredibly useful. I can get so much more done with one channel strip plugin like that than I have been with like all kinds of stuff going on tracks before.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty exciting to work that way. And so then the next follow-up question is, how do you avoid adjusting the plugin, let me put it this way. How do you avoid grabbing the faders, the knobs on the UC1, which is, so Rockstars, the UC1 is the unit that controls the SSL channel strip, so that essentially when Chris reaches down and grabs the EQ knobs, it's immediately controlling the EQ on the screen. But how do you keep yourself safe from dialing something in and then going, oh crap, I just screwed up the vocal that I just spent all this time dialing in?
Good question.
Does UConn give you that feature?
So when I'm in the SSL mixing lately, the last couple of mixes I've done, again, artist mix, Avid, SSL in the middle. So there's a feature within SSL that you hold the 360 button and it gives you DAW Pro Tools or the mixer plugin mixer. I don't really use the 360 look thing anymore. It looked cool at first, but I don't need to physically look at a virtual console. I think it's kind of pointless,
Right.
So I don't really use that a lot. But what I do is, it's been working great, man. I really dig it. But you put your channel strips across all your fader or all your audio tracks. You do your edits. You still have to edit and cut and get your edits and tweaks done, right? But what I do is I leave all my Pro Tools faders at 0, and I go into the channel strip and I gain stage the channel strip, which I find is a lot easier, like a heck of a lot easier. So I'll put it in 360 mode, which is the mixer only. And basically, when I add the plugin, the thing with Pro Tools, since it's not Yukon with SSL, you have to put your channels, like when I highlight all of my audio tracks, I'll highlight them in the order I want, right? Drums, whatever, top down, whatever you want to call it. And then I hit go, and it will put them in all order, kick, snare, toms, everything all the way across the way I want, organized. So then I'll be here and I'm going through my kick drum and I'll put the fader up. And I think by default, my plugins are down 10 dB just to have a little bit of gain staging. And then I just use the knob.
Let me interject. So when you say I put the fader up, you're talking about, you're grabbing the SSL fader, the physical fader in front of you, but that's adjusting the fader in that Sigma plugin or in the SSL plugin, channel strip plugin?
The SSL plugin. Yeah. So the channel, I think I'm using the 4KE lately these days. I really dig that one. But I have the default setting of the plugin, and it's 10 dB low. And so I still have something coming through. And then I just take the channel strip on either the UC1 or the UF1 has the big channel strip, and I'll scroll through and I just get my mix balanced that way with the plugin. And then all of my 16 returns for mixing are still at a unity level. So I'm still getting everything coming in, and that's where the mix happens, right? So I'm getting the tones and what I want through the SSL, through the little compression and everything else. And then when I'm ready to mix, I'll go and I'll hit a button, and it spills everything onto my desk for the mix. And I turn those faders on, and I have my kick, snare, toms, drums. And so my kick, snare, toms, I call that's my parallel kick, snare, tom. And then a drum. Then I have a parallel drum, and then I have keyboards. And these are all stereo buses, right? So I have a keyboard stereo bus. I have a synth stereo bus, bass, lead vocal, always number 9. It's just like, I can just ride it, right?
I'm trying to visualize as you describe it. So the faders now, when you flip the mix mode on your artist mixer packs, these are each has 8 faders, right? So that those that end up being the faders that are matched to the aux returns in your template, which is why each fader is a stereo aux return.
Yep. And it goes, if I'm in the box, it's the same for an in the box template as it is if I'm using the SSL for mixing, right? So I'm either pushing through the SSL, excuse me, or I'm just pushing into stereo aux faders, but 16 of them every single time, no matter what. And it goes all the way across, and my last one's the effects, right? It's just my effects return, which then I have another button that I hit, and it spills all of my effects. So I generally have a specific amount of effects that I use every mix. That might change if I need something crazy, but a bunch of different reverbs or drums, everything, so on and so on. So I hit that and it spills. And recently I've got it to where if I hit drum verb, instead of spilling on this side, I spill right here to my right hand. So I have everything in my right hand. And it's like 5, right? 5 reverbs. I've got a plate, a wood room, a bathroom kind of thing for snare drums or whatever. And I send to them, and I just kind of ride those up. Then I go to vocals, same kind of mentality all the way across. I've got them all just kind of going across. Yeah. But the SSL is technically still in SSL mode. So I can still go through and scroll and pan on the jog wheel to get to the track I need, re-EQ it, push it up a little bit on that fader. But then if I need to fine tune the drums overall, I go back to this desk, the 16 faders, and I push the drum bus up a little bit because it will stay. If you're in SSL mode, this doesn't move at all. I've got it hit where it spills that 16 channels out, and it will stay the whole entire time. If I don't ever want to see a Pro Tools track, I don't have to, except for those 16, which I absolutely love. So
cool. Yeah, it's great to just, and one of the things that I think is interesting to keep learning is like everybody's system is somewhat personal, right? Like we all end up with something that works really well for what we want to do, but there's all these great crossovers and takeaways from hearing other people describe their stuff. Just, I think really important stuff is knowing that having physical faders can be really game changing when you're mixing. I love having faders for all the individual drum tracks because it allows me to go in there and start sculpting, how the drums sound based on all these different mics that are in there quickly. It's great to be able to quickly flip phase on the tracks that way.
Yeah.
Because, think about how long we never had a phase button in a Pro Tools mix, You had to
Right.
just think, oh, should I go pull the trim plug-in in and flip the phase manually on something? But on a console, you could just reach up and flip phase all day long and discover new combinations. But using that SSL plugin gives us a phase button in there, which is really handy.
And it's cool too, because I'll be honest, like I've just started, it's been probably like the last 5 mixes or 6 mixes I've done over the time. And I'm mixing, but I'm not mixing a ton right now. It's just been slow, honestly. But if I can't get it done with the plugin the way I want to gain stage it, I'll just hit a button over here for drums and it spills all my drums. Because so part of the session prep when it imports in is I hit a button and it assigns all, like once all those things get Forte in and whatever, I can go highlight them and hit a button in Soundflow and it will route it to the VCA that I've got created. And so they're already part of the VCA spill. So if I need to do that push pull, like you're saying within Pro Tools, I hit a button. I'm still in SSL in front of me for plugins, but I can go in here and push and pull and get the drums dialed in the traditional way of Pro Tools where all the faders are in front of you. So it's really a cool, fast workflow. I mean, I started looking at going, this is actually cool. Like I'd love to have a UF8, but the way that I've been doing stuff, it's hard for me to go, I can change, because I want to get a UF8 just for a week to demo it and dick around with it to see if it will actually do what I want. Because if it does that, if I can hit a button at the top and go drums and it goes blat and spills them all out, I would 100% get that. I would be like, let's do all SSL.
It does have macro buttons that you can program to do things, but I think and I don't program them all day long, so I haven't gone super deep on it. But if I recall, think about it like a trigger key. Like the macro button is probably triggering something else. So if you have the something else that will do the spill for you and rearrange what's on the screen, the UF8s work like like I said, Huey mode. So they're a reflection of what I see on my screen is what's on my mixer while I'm working.
Yeah.
So if I want different different configurations, I can just come up with different ways to display stuff on the screen. And that's another way I've learned, to mix template wise. Colin Dupuis does, he really hit me to the idea of doing the track show hide organizing kind of approach to things. So like, in the same way that I think we learned that we can drop a locate marker in a Pro Tools session and then, use the number pad. And if you don't know this, Rockstars, you can use the number pad to recall those location markers. But that memory marker window does a lot more than just, location markers on the time ruler. It also does zoom settings. It also does show hide track configurations. So you can really have like quick key dialed in for instantly just seeing the drum tracks, just seeing, all the faders, just seeing the bass, just seeing the vocals, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What's funny about that is I actually have a hotkey now for 1 and 2 on Soundflow on my Stream Deck that does 2 specific. I actually forget what it is right now, but it flips and it does it exactly what I need. And I was like, oh, that's a game changer. So I made a whole new deck where I have all of my templated out presets for drums. Like I want all my drums and effects and it's all like tuk, 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 and it just does it. And it's like, it's quick too. It's great. So I don't have to do the shift 1, 2, whatever over here, type thing. So it's cool.
Yeah. I've been pretty rudimentary in my programming stuff in Soundflow so far. But what I've done is I sort of started with the Pro Tools deck where you have all these like default things because I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I might want to dive into that button or pull up the audio suite menu quickly or whatever, But whenever I finally decide, you know what, I need something, like I use Melodyne a lot. So
Yeah.
if I'm tuning a vocal, I've got a button on that deck and just click it. And if I've got Melodyne open, now I've got a whole deck that's just every tool in the Melodyne thing. So I don't have to sort of right click with the button. So really, Rockstars, I would say that's a great way to think about this stuff. It's like, I think it's cool to hear all of us describe our different ways of doing stuff. And sometimes that can get us excited. And sometimes I might be like, well, wait, that's not how I do it. So I think a good takeaway is like, however you do it, you can program it. And that's the cool thing. So you can make your own custom key that will like do the thing. And that's the big aha moment for it, which is cool. So talk to us a little bit more about your SoundFlow setup. What is SoundFlow for anybody who's not familiar with it yet?
SoundFlow. So I was so excited when I finally went Atmos. I had to buy a Mac. So I was a PC guy for 20 years, and if not longer. And I finally bought a Mac, and then I was like, oh, I can do SoundFlow. This is cool. And so SoundFlow is a company that basically builds macros for, I think there's all kinds of different applications they support now. DaVinci even is in there. And so I am a coder at time. I can code. And so I'm not saying that's part of my day job, but I do code. And so I've built a bunch of macros. Like you said, they have default ones, but there's a great community, actually. I feel like a sales thing for SoundFlow, but there's a great community out there where if you're like, hey, I'd like to be able to do this, this, and this, is it possible? And some guy's like, absolutely, this is cool. We can do this. So as an example, I have a deck out here and they call them decks. So I've got a Stream Deck that is 8x4. So it's their XL one. And I think
Stream Deck is the brand, Rockstars. If you probably have heard of it at this point, but so it was designed for, those gamers who live stream and you're like, wait, people make money by playing video games all day? We're lucky that world exists. We're benefiting from it in the studio.
For sure. But no, it just lets you do stuff. Like I've created a bunch of different decks where, like as an example for a mix prep, before I started doing this Forte thing, I had a button where I'd bring, like you said, I'd bring all my tracks to the right of my template. I'd put them in the order that I'd highlight all the drums.
Right, you have to drag them over one at a time and organize and all that. Time consuming.
Yep. So for this guy, what I can do if I bring in a track or tracks, I could go and I think I got it down to 5 minutes on a mix prep, even with just SoundFlow. But you highlight all your tracks. And what I had set up for my specific template is I'd hit a button and let's say all your drums, let's say you had 20 drum tracks. It would color code them, move them, or color code them, set the routing input to nothing. It would set the output to my drum bus. It would create a VCA called drums if it wasn't already created, because Pro Tools doesn't let you create a VCA without anything in it, which is the stupidest thing ever, but I get it. So it creates a VCA, assigns that to the VCA, and then I would move it to a folder, a drum folder that it would create as well. And then it would close that folder up. And that was with one button within SoundFlow. And so I had that for everything, drums, bass, all the different instruments you could think of. And even to the point where like, if you got samples in and you're like, oh, I don't want to shift click, whatever, you just go hit add to drums and it would do the same thing, add it, move it to the folder, and you'd be done. And then you just assign it where you want it to go, kind of thing. But I have it to where like
add,
Pro Tools.
Could you have it add the plugins for you as well?
I have it. Absolutely. Yes. 100%. Like, and that's the thing I was going to tell you on the Forte stuff. Like a couple other people were saying, hey, how hard would it be? And they were saying it was kind of mixer specific. And I get it. Make a button that you can just turn off and say, I don't want that feature for this import, but it would be awesome. And I know a couple people that would buy into it immediately. But if you could go and say, here's my kick drum, and on this kick drum, I want this track preset to be loaded for that specific kick every time.
Yeah.
And it would just be duk, 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 and done. But with SoundFlow, you can absolutely save a track preset that you want, or you can say, I want this loaded. You just have to build it. And there's guys
Right.
that are building plugin apps with standard plugins with pictures of like, Fab Filter or whatever. You hit it and it's there and it loads. So it's
Right.
really great. It's super versatile. I love it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. You don't need to play guitar to sound like a pro. Session guitarist from Native Instruments delivers hundreds of lifelike guitar performances, both electric and acoustic, right inside Contact. Whether you're laying down rockin' electric riffs or warm acoustic beds, you'll get 154 electric guitar patterns and over 250 acoustic guitar grooves for strumming and fingerpicking, all grouped into song-ready presets. Dial in recording quality tone with built-in amps, cabinets, mic modeling, and effects. You can drag and drop MIDI into your tracks effortlessly, then tweak tempo, tuning, and feel to fit your song. And with new session packs on the way, you'll never run out of inspiration. Visit nativeinstruments.com, use the code ROCK10 for 10% off, and bring full guitar performances to your next track. No more howdy rock stars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Chris Andrews, joining us from Monument, Colorado. Monument Sound, Colorado. His studio. Chris, you ready to jam?
Yes, sir. Ready to rock and roll.
Right on, dude. When you were rocking out on your Ibanez guitar doing your Steve Vai licks, what was jamming for you guys?
God, that was 1989 to 1993. So I will say my 10th grade year, I was still a hair metal guy for a long time. Which ironically, I'm getting back into that. I'm buying a bunch of vinyl that's all like 80s, like hair.
I thought you were going to say you're buying a wig.
No. This is whatever. But, back then I was a huge, everything, the kid of the late 80s and 90s, but like Metallica. And I was a huge Mr. Big fan, like Paul Gilbert's like big thing, Steve Vai. I literally spent the 10th grade summer of my high school learning the first Mr. Big album on guitar, like note for note. I had to learn how to play that thing, and decent with it. I could keep up, but I was always that wanker shredder guitar kid, I was a classical guitar player too. I did that in high school, but the rock thing kicked off, and I think I started playing when I was 8 or 9. And I remember I was going to tell you this funny story. I still have my guitars that I've had from high school, but the one I don't have is my first guitar, which was a Fender Squier Bullet. And me and my buddy, my drummer at the time, we actually ripped all the frets out of it. And I was trying to make it a fretless guitar in like 1990. And I lit it on fire in my driveway. And I remember my parents coming home and it was just flaming in the driveway, all the lacquers burning and everything. And my dad was so pissed off at me for doing that, but it was a thing you do when you're 15 years old. I'm going to burn the guitar, kind of thing.
Oh my God. And so that just gave it the different look that sort of changed the patina on it and everything.
Yeah, for sure. It changed a lot. So, it was not playable after that. I'm pretty sure most of that ended up in Lake Erie. So yeah, but no, I listen to everything. I pretty much try to listen to everything in the genres out there. So.
Right on. Well, your mixes sound amazing. They sound fantastic. Rockstars, we've got a playlist from Chris. We have 2 playlists. They're both actually Apple Music playlists, and they're in the show notes. So if you click on it, you might have to have Apple Music to hear them, but you can go over and hear the stereo mixes, and you can hear the Atmos mixes. And I will continue, and I've said this before, but I'll just sort of outline it really quickly. I have there's a couple of different ways to do this, but I have the AirPod Pros, which sort of look like earbuds but go in with a little rubbery thing and block out sound if you want them to. But you can do this with regular headphones if you're on a desktop or a laptop. What you do is you go into the Apple Music app, and you can also just play one of these songs. And then if you go into the settings on your iPhone, for example, or the settings on the computer, you can find where it says Atmos on or off. And there's also an automatic setting, so it will automatically play the Atmos mix for you every time it's available. Mm-hmm. But if you want to really teach yourself like, well, what's the big deal about this? What's the difference between stereo and Atmos? Why do I care in a pair of headphones? All that kind of stuff. What you do is you go into the settings. You have to make sure that sound check is on. So turn that button on. Sound check is the thing that says, all right, we're going to make sure as we play different mixes in Apple Music, we'll make sure they're all the same level. So they're matched level. So it's always like an apples to apples kind of comparison. And then you can just take the Atmos selector and you can say always on or always off. And then that way you can manually turn it off for a moment and you'll hear whatever mix, whether it's Chris's or somebody else's, you'll hear it play in stereo and you'll know, oh, that's what the stereo sounds like in my headphones. Because this is something you're going to have to do in headphones unless you have an Atmos setup or something. But I'm just assuming most of us haven't necessarily got there yet. And most of us have headphones. And then you can switch to Atmos always on, and you will suddenly hear it flip over to the Atmos mix, and it's remarkable. It's really, really remarkable. I remember at the beginning, there was sort of a public confusion about Atmos a little bit and, whether mixes sounded different or better or whatever. But once I figured this out and I heard the way it's being presented to us when we're streaming it like this, it really opened my ears up to how the Atmos mix, all of a sudden the depth, it's like the whole sound field, your sound stage expands and you're like, oh, I thought we were listening to music in a box and now we're listening to music on a big stage. So tell us a little bit about that. So I guess that question segues into, what does it feel like when you're doing your Atmos mixes versus your stereo and the ways that it sort of opens up your depth of field and, depth forward and backward and depth to the left and right and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So I love it. Like I said to a friend of mine the other day, I don't like listening to stereo anymore if I don't have to, especially down here. I mean, this is obviously a tuned room and whatnot, so I'm right. Kind of lucky in that sense. But even on like the AirPod Pros, like you put those on, you turn the head tracking, like you said, and it's kind of cool. If people at first when they hear it, they're like, wow, this is crazy. When I'm personally mixing, say I'm starting a mix, I really prefer, just to throw this out there, I prefer to mix both stereo and Atmos. I get a lot of stems to mix the Atmos, which is great. There's some issues at times. I can touch on that some too, but I like to be able to mix because then when I'm mixing, I can figure out what do I want to do for items, right? If there's a shaker or something like, and it's over here, but I kind of want to move it or whatever. If there's a delay, so I take that all into consideration when I'm printing my stems. I know a lot of these guys are baking everything in. The drum wall is baked. So now you're stuck with this drum wall that has reverb just here. And now you're relying on these really expensive Atmos reverbs to push things around. Where I'm finding personally, and again, this is just me, I will go and print drums, bass, vocals, whatever, all dry. Do the standard deliverable type thing, bake them, print your baked in for live stems if they're playing that. But then what I do is I have a folder again with Soundflow. I hit a button and it makes these folders inside of my session for Atmos, stems, whatever, so on and so on and so on. It's actually out on Soundflow that people can grab it. It does a folder generation per session. And what I like to do, and I just find it more immersive, honestly, with the whole mixing of it, is I'll print everything dry, and then I print all the vocals. Or all the effects, I print everything separate. So the wood drum room, the plate drum room, all of that. So then I can put the wood room here, and I can put the plate up there, and I can put the bathroom wall on this wall, and it just builds it more versus this baked in thing where like your drum or your guitars are wide. All of these guys are doing this 916 thing where the guitars are wide. Like I don't have a 916, but I do wide guitars and it sounds cool. But with your reverbs are just there, that's where you hear it. Right. So then it's not immersive to me. So when I'm mixing, I'm really thinking about the reverbs. Like this is going to be really badass behind you. And this is going to be really cool if I have this pinging like edge guitar kind of thing going on, and you can assign that to an Atmos object and start moving it around in the space. So now you have this guitar delay that in stereo is just going to be over here. It might be ping ponging or whatever, But in Atmos, it's moving around your head, and it's really cool. You can have it. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so when you say baked in, do you mean that a lot of the ways people are going from stereo to Atmos is the reverb is blended into the guitar? It's baked in on that guitar track. So at the Atmos stage, all you can do is take the guitar and the reverb and put it somewhere, as opposed to putting the dry guitar here and the reverb over there. Because
exactly
this thing where I look like I'm flying and I'm about to crash into a tree is the way that I love to do mixing. Like even in stereo, it's such a great trick to put the close mic on one side and then have a room mic over on the other speaker. That goes all the way back to, you hear classic jazz recordings where you get that effect,
Right. And especially with like, if you're even tracking in that sense, like the guys that are, there's still people that are thinking Atmos is a thing. Maybe it is. It's been around for a decade plus with movies, and then music is just like, this is badass. So I personally don't think it's going anywhere. If it goes anywhere, then I have a really kick-ass setup for doing video work, kind of thing. So it's not a fail in that regard. But if I were tracking anymore, I would consider talking with bands and saying, hey, this is going to sound really crazy. We're going to do this because of what's going to happen later. Like you said, put your room mics in the back, and those are going to be my backwards drum mics for everything. And really, like, I have a vision of doing a jazz band where everybody would probably hate it if you were listening to it, but literally put stuff like you're sitting in a chair in the middle of the room and everything's around you, but the drums aren't here to start. It's a guitar, and you've got your drummer over on the right side, maybe like between these two, and you've got your bass, like your upright bass over here. And it's really an immersive experience. Like you're sitting in a concert hall in the middle of the floor on the stage with the band, and you're listening to it, versus like everyone's doing the A/B of like, it has to sound like the stereo mix. Personally, if you're sending me stems to mix your stereo Atmos version or your Atmos version from the stereo, I want my Atmos mix to sound better. And that's kind of a rude thing to say, but I'm going to make it sound like the mix, but I want it to sound better, as far as like I just finished an Atmos mix 2 days ago. And I noticed some things in my mix to the stereo mix that were standing out because you have so much more headroom. And I was like, I wonder if that's going to pass, because it was literally it sounded like the Eventide Crystal Echo. That thing that's going around. And I was like, yeah, that's what that is. But I put it up and it's moving around, and it didn't do that in the stereo mix, but in the Atmos mix, it's doing that. So it's those little things that people are still getting picky about. But then again, it's immersive. So I'm kind of like, it's like a Wild West thing still, but they want this A/B, you hit a button, here's your stereo, here's your Atmos, and it sounds the same. I'm like, okay, I get it. Because it's that whole Apple Music thing.
Well, do you feel like when you say do you feel like that's a request from clients, producers and artists wanting to, like we created a thing in stereo and we want to keep that vibe kind of thing? Or is it I can see how that works in the remixing world where people are taking classic records. It's a bold move to take a classic record and change it around a bit in that respect. Oh, we got barking dogs next door. Maybe you'll get to hear it.
Oh, cool. Might be mine too. I think a lot of it's the requirement, right? So some of these guys that are doing Atmos are doing it to get playlisted. Like that's the big thing with Apple Music. If you don't have an Atmos mix, it's not going to get on their playlist. So they're putting the money out to do that. So I get that. The creativity of it, because it does sound bigger. Like there's so much more open dynamics. I don't know I'm sure you've sat in an Atmos room that's awesome, but like you get in a good sounding room, it's just like, I'm not a Pink Floyd fan. I respect it, but the Dark Side of the Moon came out on Atmos on Apple, and I turned all the lights off in here, and only lights I saw were the green lights from the speaker's power. And I sat in here and I was like, damn, this is cool. It was the clocks one was just going all over the place. And I was like, this is cool. And that to me is what builds the experience for people with their music.
iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music. Check out the new iZotope Velvet plugin, featuring intelligent sibilance learn de-essing that automatically detects harsh frequencies, dynamic tone shaping with lift and tame controls, and transparent declick to clean up mouth noises, pops, and clicks, all in one easy plugin for polished professional vocals. And now Ozone 11 takes your mastering game even further with the new Clarity module for adaptive spectral enhancement, upward compression in the maximizer for increased punch without losing dynamics, and stem focus to process individual elements like vocals or drums with surgical precision. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Velvet, Ozone, or any fantastic plugin at iZotope.com. I don't think either of us are going to do this at this point. But I will say that if you filled the room up with bong smoke and then had the laser lights going at the same time, that would probably really add to the experience.
Make me a better Pink Floyd fan.
That one moment might really be memorable.
Yeah. I mean, I respect
that's
them,
cool, man. That's cool.
cool.
And I, that was one of my questions too, was, does mixing in Atmos change your attitude about compression and dynamics?
It does. Honestly, when I'm printing stems, I print like with Soundflow, I use the program Bounce Factory, which is an add-on software, which I don't know if you've used it, but it is the greatest thing on the planet.
Yeah. Andrew Shep's.
It is like I had a 10, and you pay for the big one, like the $50 a month one, the subscription service thing. And I had a 10 or 12 song album, and he was so great. I spoke to him one day for like a 30-minute, 1 hour window, and he walked me through a couple things like on a Zoom call and really helped me dial in the analog side of what I needed to do. So I set up all of my snapshots. I had, I think, 10 or 12 songs. I went to bed and it did all of it, opened every single session, did probably, I think I had 800 stems that were printing that night, and it went through analog in real time, printing them all out, putting them in folders. And I woke up and I said, cool. And I print it through my mix bus, right? So I'll have my drum stem and I'll have all the different stems through the mix bus. So I'm getting the processing that I need for the compression. So when I'm putting it into Atmos, I'm not doing a lot of extra compression. I might bring a fab filter across all of the tracks and kind of tweak there, but it's pretty, if you get a good stem, it's pretty easy to make it work well for you. I do say I get a couple stems now. Like the one song I just did, it was hitting like -5 LUFS on the mix. And I was like, oh, these stems are going to come in really hot. And they did. I had to trim them down. I think I was 15 decibels down on the mix to get it to spec just to start. And I was like, holy crap, like speakers are clipping, the Grace is clipping. I'm like, holy crap. So it's a balance. It's a fight, you got to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not in the world where I really have to print stems yet, but I may need to do that. I may not know that I'm in a world that needs that, and I just haven't discovered it yet. But certainly I know you and others are needing to do that for delivering mixes as deliverables.
So here's a thing on stems that I learned the hard way probably 12 years ago, maybe even longer. It's probably even 15 years ago, I'd say. I had a guy that came in and we did a song, and it ended up getting picked up on television for that old TV show, Grace by Design. We did not have an instrumental stem, and they needed that. And so now every single time I have like I said, I have a button that I hit and it says create session folders, and it puts it in the bounce folder, and it has an entire architecture of Atmos, dry, the rough mix, the ref mix, the master, everything's all in there. So everything is part of the session. No matter if I go away, I have everything printed. And I learned the hard way because I needed to recall that song. And it was an analog back then too. I had all this gear strapped to it. So fortunately I had pictures taken and stuff. But I always tell people now, like even a buddy of mine up in Denver that has a studio, he's like, yeah, I got this band done. I was like, did you print stems? He's like, nope. I'm like, dude, print stems. Give them instrumental, give them an acapella, give them a stereo mix, give them an unmastered loud mix, and then whatever else they need, because you never know, right? And like now they want, all these guys are playing the backing track, so do your stems or whatever that are for the live stuff. So I always tell guys, print your stems. It doesn't take it takes so long. No, it doesn't. It's part of the gig. Like, make it work, make it for your customer. You'll be happy later when they ask for it.
Yeah.
You know. So
yeah, that's great.
Highly recommend it.
That's great. I've had to do some strange stems in the past. Well, I've definitely had to go back and get instrumentals again, and that's a great tip. It doesn't hurt to just remember to print vocal ups and vocal downs too. Usually it's vocal ups and guitar ups. I'll just raise my hand for that, Rockstars, because when you go to mastering, that's when you're like, oh man, sure glad we had the guitar ups and the vocal ups at this stage. But the instrumental is a great one because people have come back to me for that. But I've also had an artist, this was a very unusual thing, but they didn't have a drummer for their live shows and they still wanted to play. So I actually made, I think it was drum and bass stems for them, where it was just for their live. It was just like a really blasting kick and snare, like mono mix that they could just play through the PA and play along with. That was their track.
Well, I'll say that the stems just saved my butt. Like I just saved my butt with stems on a video file I did that they did a recall. We just did a movie and the dialogue stuff was all stemmed out by default. So it saved my ass. So print stems.
All right. You may have already answered this question, but I thought I'd ask it in case there's more to say about it. How do you feel like you're using effects differently when mixing an Atmos?
Very little. Honestly, I have a template that has a couple different reverbs and that's it. I have a vocal reverb. I have a vocal delay, like almost like a doubler, if you want to call it that. And then I have a drum room reverb. And so the stuff that I'm getting is generally, like I said, it's baked in. If I have to do stuff with mine, it's, and I'll name drop. I got, when I first got into Atmos, Michael James out in California hit me up and we were both talking and he walked me through like 2 hours of a setup that he did. And I've adopted it 100%. We jokingly call it the layer cake. And I've modified it since then. I mean, this is 2.5 years ago now. So I have some effects in there and I have a lot more objects and whatnot. But, a lot of the stuff that comes in is baked in, so I can just kind of move the reverbs. And if I need to, if it's like drum heavy on the front and you hear the reverb there, but it sounds weird because it's not back here, then obviously I'll send to the room verb that I have and feather it in and try to make it sound Atmos, verbed. But like I was saying with doing effects, if I print my own stereo mixes, I have stereo stems of effects printed without drums, just the echo. And I can fly that around where I need it. That being said, when I'm doing video post work, it's a whole different game. Like I've got a bunch of different reverbs to do things and kind of the sky's the limit there, right? That's where the creative side comes in for Atmos immersion for video. Audio it's very simple. I don't want to say it's simple. It's just, you kind of feel what you need, right? I always do reverbs, but I always turn off the LFE because I don't want reverb in the bass. I don't need that. So it's a 704 general like bus if I'm doing that. Maybe some delays. I will say I don't have a lot of reverb plugins right now because they're really expensive. They're crazy expensive.
Oh, so, the Atmos or the immersive plugins at this point?
Yeah, I have a couple of the main ones like the Seventh Heaven and I think I have Altiverb now and the Fab Filter one is fantastic. His R Pro R, I think is what it's called, is absolutely spectacular.
And so this is one where you just feed it. You can put something into the reverb and the returns of the reverb are hitting multiple objects or multiple beds all around you kind of thing.
Yeah, and they give you a bunch of internal like digital faders that you can pull down. Like if you don't want it so much in the front, you can pull the front and the sides down. So it has like a balance that you can do. So
nice. Can you otherwise fake it out? Can you sort of create your own where you're like, I'm going to just use, 4 instances or 8 instances of the reverb and have one send kind of hit them all and hopefully it'll sound like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of an old school way they do it. Some guys still do that with delays. They'll run delays like as a, 15 millisecond, 30, so on and so on. And it goes, and it goes around. So you can kind of hear it.
Right on.
Kind of same idea with, it's cool. But some of the new ones, you just add it and it just does it. So.
Right. Yeah. Just like other things. All right. So back to your earlier point about thinking forward when we're tracking. So let's just straight up ask you, what are some additional mics or tracks you kind of have thought, I wish I had this while you were mixing an Atmos, related to drums. It seems like some of the obvious things might be more room mics and that can individually go to different speakers instead of having to, I don't know what, just head room to all speakers at once. And then beyond that would be like, what about other instruments? What about guitar effects or mics or things that would be cool to go to those? And can you envision people figuring out a way to actually track and hear the effect somewhat? I think if people, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe if we have a surround system going, or if, we can actually record in real time hearing a bit of a surround effect when we're tracking that can then be recreated in Atmos in a better kind of manner. Does that make any sense at all?
The head mic, the old head, the dude with the mic, the head mic.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that, but like, I don't know. I mean, in surround, you can actually. So here, let me back up. I know I'm jumping around with my thoughts here, but if you wanted to track with Atmos turned on, you can't because there's too much latency in the processing, so you're not going to hear something in real time coming back to you. But but if you wanted to track and you had things set up as surround, you would be able to do it, I think, right?
Yeah. There's a guy up north actually that has an Atmos studio, and he's setting things up to record Atmos in real time. I need to touch base with him. I think with the tracking, like I was saying with the vision of the band around you, I would think, not having done it, it would be weird. I know a couple of guys have tried this on the Atmos forums, but if you're sitting here and you have your band around you, like you're the guy that's sitting in front of your favorite band and they're serenading you and playing in front of you and you're hearing everything coming at you, but then you hear the room. Like say you're in a big, whatever, Blackbird studio room or something, and it's absolutely spectacular. I would think it'd be pretty cool to experiment with having everything close mic'd like you would, but then also having mics along the wall. Because that's essentially what it's going to be in Atmos, right? You got the walls that you're putting stuff to, but you would have that delay capture, and that would be your room sound that you could build and essentially use that as capable file system or audio files versus having a reverb to fake it out. You'd have a mic flown at your bed level for the speaker and then maybe like a height one, so you could just kind of build it. Or even have like I said, your close mic'd area of your band, but then have like, even if you're tracking a guitar, like, the old days where you would I used to do this. You'd have open up your staircase and you put a microphone at the top of the staircase and record that. Same type of idea. You'd have these kind of distant mics that you would utilize for your space, but you'd have your close tracks as well. So it would be kind of the same idea as printing a reverb that you're using for the mix, but if you were to capture it in an absolutely spectacular environment, I think it would be fantastic to hear what it would do.
Are you ready to launch your career in the audio or entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, right here in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs to prepare you for the industry. From studio production and live sound to audio for film and a whole lot more. You'll learn by doing, working with professional-grade gear alongside experienced industry pros. If you're more into the business side of entertainment, SAE's entertainment business program teaches essential basics like contracts and promotion to help you navigate the industry. With diploma, associate, or bachelor's degrees, there's a path for everyone. Plus, Career Services supports graduates as they take the next step. Want to see it for yourself? Immerse yourself in Nashville's exciting music scene and book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. I like to think about it in the context of even like the home studio where you're like, you don't have this big giant space that is symmetrical or anything like that, but you're like, yeah, I just want to like have an instrument here and then I want the bathroom mic to be right over here and I want to hear that, and have that be a part of the composition that goes into the into the Atmos mix. So I think it'll be exciting as we get there. I think it'll be exciting as we're able to, experience that in the creation as well as in the mixing process. Right. Because there's a little bit of, accepting right now that the mixing process has all this capability, but it's sort of disconnected from the creation process. So unless you forward think it by placing the mics up, which people are definitely doing. You're talking about these ideas. We're talking to lots of people who are also practicing this, which is cool. But it'd be fun for everybody to sort of experience just cool guitar effects that have those sounds and start composing that way.
Yeah. And I think the big thing with it is the listeners are, sorry, my leg is cramping.
Yeah, me too. I got to be honest, I hate sitting in a chair. That's why I'm always squirming.
I know.
When I started this podcast a decade ago, I was always standing. I was like, I'm going to do them all standing. And then one day I was like, all right, I'll sit down in a chair. And now I'm just like, oh.
I think we're in the same chair too. We have the same mix chair. We have one of those.
You have the stealth
chairs.
Chair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The stealth chair, Rockstars. Check it out.
The stealth chair. I think the big thing with the idea that we're talking about though is the experimentation of it, and people, I don't know if they're ready, right? If you had a drum wall and you didn't have your drums in front of you and you had your drums to the left, it would sound like something different, right? Everyone's used to that stereo environment of like, oh, it's left and right and the snare drum's dead center. But if you start changing it up, I want to hear it to where you have it set where you turn your head tracking on and I turn this way and all I hear are the drums and the bass is over here and I turn this way and it's behind me. Like that's what I want to get to.
Yeah. Well, the AirPods give me that version, a version of that listening on the iPhone, except that
have you turned?
You're
have you done the head turn?
Yeah, you're describing a head turn that you want to do because you're actually looking at one of the musicians. Whereas I think a lot of people, the head turn thing in the iPhone now is like, oh, we've got this normal band mix and we do this and now everything just shifted weird. And I'm just like, so I think most people feel like the iPhone head turn thing is just still a little goofy, but it'll get better. That's just all it takes is upgrade.
Yeah, there's some new stuff I think coming out. My buddy was telling me about. There's some new, they map it to your head, ear and stuff. And it's like your own profile. And apparently it's a lot better binaural tracking with stuff like he quote said, it was pretty impressive. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So here's a question for you. When tuning scream sung vocals, so you do a lot of like high energy rock and roll too, where singers are singing really powerfully and they're on the edge of a scream, but they're hitting the note. It's a note. It's sung well. So "Dying to Be You," that track. I can't remember if that was the band name or the song name, but as an example, and maybe I don't need to use an example. Maybe you know exactly what I mean. But I do know that sometimes when you're tuning vocals like that, and this may not be a fair question to you if it's already getting tuned before you get it, but sometimes it can be really challenging to tune vocals when the singers are sort of pushing the edge of distortion in their tone of their voice. Have you learned, and like if, for example, if I put it in Melodyne, it might freak out, or if I put it in, some other one, it might freak out. So my question to you is, have you got any tips for us in that world, when we want to tune vocals and they're pushing the edge of distortion and that grittiness,
Yeah.
how do we manage that well?
Yeah, that's a good one. So that band, it's not that that's Beauty School Dropout. So they're
Right,
out
Beauty
of
School
LA.
Dropout. They're great.
So Dying to Be You was actually the first Atmos mix I ever did. And I forget who actually did the stereo on that one. So I did not do the stereo mix on that one. I just did the Atmos mix. So those came to me that way. As far as the melodyning, I mean, I know what you're saying, because you're going to get that and you're going to see the wave and it's going to be everywhere. And you're going to kind of go, huh. I know that particular
Well, it just
song
freaks out. It just doesn't know how to handle it. The algorithm just makes it sound weird, or it just says, oh, there's no pitch in that note kind of thing sometimes. So it gets challenging.
Yeah. When it was bands, when I was doing some of the harder scream stuff, I would have them layer it, honestly. I would layer it up and blend it. And it seems like it would help out a little bit in that sense, because if they, and it was take after take after take to get scream bands, you know, when they're doing that, for the energy portion of it. You could tweak it a little bit with Melodyne. I would probably feather it. And if I had two different takes of it or two different tracks, I would blend them up just enough to get close to the note and then just feather those things and almost kind of blend the ride together, or bolt it to one track, you know.
Do you think it's fair to think that when we hear vocals that sound great and they're in that realm of, you know, almost scream, almost distortion, that somebody may have just sang them really well? Like maybe they didn't get leaned on with tuning like other vocals do.
Yeah, I could see that for, I know that particular band is very good at what they do with their production. So there's a lot of processing going on. I haven't seen their session, so I don't want to say anything to that sense, but
that's fair. That's fair. I didn't mean to put you on the spot about
their stuff comes
too much, but
no. I'm just saying, like, their stuff always comes to me very well done as far as like production quality.
Yeah.
Where, like you're saying, yes, like the bands that can actually sing and do their work is fantastic. You know, it's great if you don't have to use Melodyne except for subtle things, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still using it. I'm using it on my own voice. I'm using it on my own band. I use it with indie artists that I work with, and I've gotten very good at it. I know how to use it so that it, you know, it hopefully doesn't create things that I hear later and don't like, you know, or lose something good in the original vocal. But it is tricky to do, and you know, it can be a really useful thing. But let me ask you this about finishing up an Atmos mix. So again, I described comparing a stereo mix to an Atmos mix in the headphones, really hearing how the Atmos opens up. Sound check is on, so it's level matching stuff. What about mastering? Is mastering a part of Atmos mixing in your world? Is it not?
Yep.
What do you have to tell us about that?
It is. So I'm usually getting singles a lot. So the full albums, I'm not mastering the full albums, but for all of my stuff, generally it's a single coming out. A lot of these guys are every quarter doing a single type thing, which I think is awesome. Not to say I won't do a full album, but it's awesome to do the singles. What I tend to do is I get it in the Atmos mix. I have my template with the stereo mix, and I A/B it back and forth and tonally get it as close as I possibly can to their track. If I have to add plugins to the tracks to get the tone of the volume of the vocals, et cetera, then I bring it into I do my ADM print, and that's the Atmos file. I import that into the Dolby assembler, which is the best $100 you'll spend for Atmos, I think. So you get that, and you have the ADM on top, and you have the stereo file on the bottom. The stereo file, if it's a master, it's going to be significantly louder. So immediately you turn it down 10 dB. I've got a button again on my Stream Deck for SoundFlow that has an Atmos. It's called Dolby Assembler, actually. And in that, I have the play, start, zoom in, zoom out, all the features of the actual application. And it's actually pretty cool because it's got kind of a band axle EQ, you know, it's high, mid, low type thing with a EQ curve and gain. I think it goes up to like 12 dB on up and down, basically plus and minus. So you can turn that on. It has a limiter on the application as well, but it's not a brick wall limiter. It's just I honestly, it should just be called volume, because it's really, to me, you can destroy it, but I use it just if I need to get it pushed up. So I'll bring those in. I'll get it tone matched when I hit stereo or Atmos, where it flips, where I can hear the difference, right? So the idea is I'm listening for one, it should be lined up. It should flip 100%. Like essentially I can null it. And I had to do this on a couple where I take the stereo track and the ADM file in Pro Tools, because the stems might not have come exact dead on. And so I have to line them up. And so I'll get it to where I hit, I'll run a EQ and flip the phase on the stereo and hit it. And the Atmos, the left-hand sides will disappear, but the backs are still going. I'm like, yep, it's good. We're good. So I know that the stereo is right and it's lined up and does its thing. But then when you're in the mastering, for me, at least with the Dolby mastering, I'm already tone matched it to the mix, right? So it's as close as I can. So my thought on the Dolby assembler is it's the very, very final touch of just getting a little bit of EQ, push and pull if I need to, plus or minus 2 dB type scenarios at the most. And I'm really kind of like listening like at spec volume, 85 dB is what I run in here. And so I'm going. I'm like, yep, that's good. It's perfect. The bass is feeling right. Everything's feeling right. Then I export that out as a mastered file that I've done. Okay. And that's what I've been doing.
Okay, yep. Cool. So it really is mastering, but it's like you're doing it as part of the mix process. It's not like it goes off to a new mastering. Okay, cool. Although I do know that. Yeah, and they actually
you can do that. Yeah, they absolutely do. And I'd love to get into that game because it's great. I mean, it's kind of the same. I mean, there's guys that are using hardware. I'm sure I'm not doing that. But there's some guys that bring it into Pro Tools and they unwrap the ADM file in Pro Tools and they're mastering it in there too, which is like, it's crazy to me because you bring an ADM file into Pro Tools and you can remix the song. Like it's essentially, so
fascinating.
It's a detail.
All right. Well, let me see here. Whoops. I just lost my whatever I did, I hit the wrong button. There we go. So the other question I wanted to ask you was about marketing. I think you had commented that you were working on, sort of use the word driving new marketing to build your business. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a topic that, anybody who's as serious about mixing as you are is going to love to learn more about or just think about. So what would you like to say about effective ways to market as somebody who's built this beautiful studio? You're obviously not in a music hub like one of the 3 coasts any longer or whatever, even though that has benefits. But I mean, in the end, we're all just in these, isolated boxes doing our thing. So how do you find new people to work with?
So a lot of it's been word of mouth with me over the years. There's a couple bands that will come to me for all their stuff now, which is a great established relationship that I have. And that's kind of what I push for, is to maintain that relationship. I want you to continue to come to me, even if we might not agree on some stuff at the time. Like there's always that point in my career with this where I've made decisions like, hey guys, this is going to be really stupid, but we're going to try it. And they're like, we either love it or we're like, that was really stupid. And we laugh about it and go drink a beer or whatever. So I think relationship building with people builds a lot of trust and builds the word of mouth, for that customer success type scenario, if you want to call it that. The marketing side, I've been honestly really relying heavily on ChatGPT helping me rewrite stuff. I like writing, but I don't love it, right? So I'll write something out and I'll be like, hey, I need this to sound more professional. I need it to be for a Facebook blurb that I'm going to use or a blog. And then I'll let it do its thing and I'll go through and retweak what it wasn't right or that's stupid or whatever. And then I'll add my photos and I'll do my kind of press release if you will. And I'll post it on my studio site, which may or may not get traffic. I don't track that, but then I'll put it on Facebook. I'll link that Facebook thing to my studio page. Mm-hmm. And then I will take that same blog and I'll go to Google and I'll put it on Google, which may or may not do anything, but it's Google. So it's going to be crawling somewhere in the world, right? So I'll add the exact same thing and link it back to my studio page. Read more. You want to learn more. It's like, every time I do it, I laugh because it's like that Starship Troopers movie. Do you want to know more?
Right. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is, these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode.
So I'm always kind of like marketing that post, and I'll put it out to the social medias. I don't use X anymore. I never really was into that, Twitter, whatever it is, but Facebook marketing, word of mouth, and I don't like to do spec mixes anymore. I will if it's something that I'm going to get a better client for. Honestly, I don't feel like I am so awesome. I feel like I'm one of those guys that once you work with me, it's going to be awesome. Like it's going to be a great thing. We're going to make it work. I joked with a friend of mine today that I've had 2 clients in 25 years that I've deleted their stuff off of a hard drive. Like I have every session I've ever done on DVD disc backup, on a hard drive backup in the cloud, wherever I've got it. And there's 2 guys that I've deleted because they were just arrogantly rude over the session. I gave them their session. I was like, I'm done. I don't need to deal with this. And here's your stuff. And that was it. I never try to burn a bridge with people, right? Like I know I've had disagreements with clients in the past, but I'm always trying to be one of those people that's like, hey, let's work through this and make this the best we can, right? I always tell bands too, like as a marketing sense, treat your music like a business, right? All these guys are like, we got this gig. I'm like, do you have a bank account for your band? Nope, no, we take the money. Go make a bank account for your band so you can actually earn money and save the money. Like I know some guys are like weekend warriors and stuff, but I'm sure that the big artists that you see are absolutely like, they have an LLC, they have something for their music and stuff like that. So I always tell guys that are young and treat it like a business, right? Treat your stuff like a business and then build from there. But I like that client stuff that comes into me knowing like mixing isn't cheap. It's not going to be, I'll try to give you a deal, but I'd like to, it's my time. And as an example, I had a band that came into me and they're like, yeah, we want you to mix. And I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, well, we have $1,000. I'm like, how many songs are we doing? They're like, well, we wanted the whole thing mixed for like $1,000. We have 12 songs. I'm like, yeah, I'm not your guy. Right. Like people don't understand what goes into it. So the marketing side of that is like, I made a, it's kind of funny. Another guy had it and he showed it to me. I was like, that's really cool. I could use that. I made a cost estimator tool that's on my website, and I did it all with ChatGPT. I went in there,
that's great.
Talked to it. I said, hey, I want you to do this, and this. I need a drop-down menu for major label, indie label, and DIY. And I said, I want mastering, I want instrumental mixes, I want stems all put into this as an option. And if you do this, it adds this. And if you put this button, it does 3% credit card fee because I'm tired of spending credit card fees. And then if you're a major record label and a major and indie, after 5 songs, you don't get a discount. If you're a DIY, you get 10% discount after 5 songs or whatever. And it did it. And I was like, this is fantastic. It's on my website. That's amazing.
Yeah, because it'll. I have another friend. I don't know if you know Matt, but he talked to me about the same thing. So because it's so good at spitting out HTML code. So if you want to do,
it's awesome.
Just have a calculator thing on a website, it'll completely do that for you. I haven't tried that. I haven't really needed.
You should check it out. Go to my site and check it out. It's really cool.
Very cool idea. Very cool idea. I use it all the time for writing, because one place that I don't feel very like I'm, an expert is when it's time to write an email, and I wish it would do things like manage the who it's being sent to and who's copied, and like make sure you don't send it to the wrong person. there are people that are great at that. I don't think of myself as one of them. I'm like, let me just focus on the music, man, So it's great to have tools like that. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. I know that there's still a lot of discussion about, like, you got to know how to have the right prompt and everything. And I'm like, my attitude is like, no, you don't. You just talk to it. You just know how to spell out all the, be as clear as you can. So maybe you can give us more insight into that. Maybe we do have to learn something about prompts, or maybe we don't. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I treat it. So as an example, I updated my resume not too long ago, and I started out saying, hey, you are a professional resume writer. Do you understand? And it goes, yep. And it says, and then I go, I would like to retailor my resume to make it more current with better versed bullet points and so on and so on and so on and so on. And it says, cool. And it said, what do you need? And it goes, please upload your resume to me or whatever. And so I copied my resume and put it in there. And what does it do? 4 seconds later, it goes, blah, and spits out all this crap, gets rid of stuff, frames it out right, and puts it in there. I mean, it was scary how accurate it was. And it took the stuff that I had over 25 years and re-bulleted it out and framed it. And then I said, I need this to look a little more modern, right? And it goes and it does it. And it gets it from, like, I think I was at 5 pages for a resume down to like 2. And it was absolutely crazy. But for like a coding thing, you literally have to, I start everything with it like it's a person, but I'm like, you're a professional audio engineer. Do you understand? Yes. And it does its thing. And then you start talking to it, because it's almost like it sets it up for, like, this is what I need to look for. And you always tell it thank you too, because apparently if you say thank you to it, it costs Google or whoever runs ChatGPT a ton of money. Every time you say thank you, it costs them there's a whole article about it. It's like millions of dollars to tell them thank you. So I'm like, thank you a lot for everything, enter. So you always
maybe because it's just one extra reply or something. I don't know. That's funny.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. I've gotten really accustomed to using it a lot more. And one thing I think is good to be aware of for everybody is when you sign up for it and when you start using it for the first time, if you have any, if you're familiar with like using Google and you've got Gmails and stuff and then you use other stuff, you realize after a while, you're like, oh my gosh, I got so much stuff in there, So wanting to make sure that you start out on the right foot. So one of those things is just how you log in initially. If you choose to use ChatGPT, once you log in, once you choose your method of login, you're like locked into that and you can't change it unless you dump the whole thing and start all over again. So do be very thoughtful about that. Be smart, figure out your login method, make sure you've got your extra 2-factor authentication and all those kind of things set up so that it's, properly secure, because you're probably going to, spill your life story into it over time. So it's just
have you looked yourself up on Chat?
Oh yeah, I did. I actually did it with my brother from another podcast, Matt Boudreau. We did it and we asked it to describe who we were and what our podcasts were, and both of our jaws just dropped. We were like, nailed it, and it was like way better description than we would have done.
Yeah, it's creepy. Great, I absolutely love it. Like I said, I'll go in and write blog posts and put it out on my page and retweak it and add pictures and stuff and just kind of tailor it. Like I'll do stuff for, like, I'm doing a fundraiser for children's cancer. Like you probably see me posting all over the place about it. And I do it every year.
That's great.
Yeah, I do it every year, and I'll put it in there and I'll like rewrite this to make it sound more motivational for 26 days left, and does its thing. And then it always puts those dumb little icons in there. I'm like, get rid of the icons. Like it takes the icons out.
It loves those icons. I'm like, whoa, my head's spinning. I don't know if this is a good idea or bad. Sometimes I use the icons and sometimes I'm like, take them out of there. Well, that's groovy, man. Well, hey, so I have one more question for you. And this is this is one that I love to ask guests on the show. It is a hypothetical question, and we get to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you go back and you find young Chris, who's, you're like, you look up from your scale. So who's that? And it's you, and you've come in and you're like, no, you're not me. You don't have any long hair. Where's your long hair, dude? But you say, listen, man,
right.
I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice do you feel like going back and giving yourself if you could?
Stay in school. Wow. In regards to the studio, I know one of your things was
you can
quotes,
spit into life
right?
advice too, if you want.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Like do your thing. Like be like, if I were to tell myself, like I have a couple good friends that are like, Chris, you have a sound when you mix. Like, that's cool. Like, everybody has a sound. Like, we all chased the Chris Lord algaes and all that stuff. Like, I kind of personally stopped doing that a while ago because, like, that's a thing, and I do my thing. So I always like try to be original with your stuff. And I have a slogan. You'll see it from time to time where number 11 shows up on my Facebook page, and it's my jujitsu instructor told me like 8 years ago. He's like, you have a lot of negative people in your life. He's like, you need to get, like, he was like, this was like when Facebook was kind of getting rolling, you know.
Yeah.
And I still talk to him about this almost weekly in our jujitsu school. And he's like, you have a lot of negative people. And he sent me this article for New Year's, and I had a New Year's resolution. And it was the top 15 things you need to do in life to be successful. And it was the standard stuff, you know, like invest wisely and kind of thing like that. But number 11 was the get rid of the negative, vile people in your life, and be surrounded. The top 5 people that you surround yourself with are going to be the people that are going to be the most successful with you and your close friends. And that's kind of like my thing now, is I have, like, you'll see it where I'm like, oh, it's negative 11. It's hashtag 11. I call it hashtag 11. Right. And it's the number 11 on that. I'll send you the article, 'cause it's actually really good. And it's just surround yourself with the positive people if you can, you know. If the negative stuff, there's a lot of negative stuff in the world right now too, as we all see, but like the positivity obviously will help you with the music environment grow, and run with that, right? Run with the whole thing of, like, if it's not a day, if you're recording and it's not a great day with the band, say, guys, this isn't working. I know we've paid for the time. It's on me today, where it's not right, you know, kind of make it work. You know, if the singer's struggling, doesn't have to be done that day. Make it the positive experience to build upon it and make that career grow for you over the years, versus like having to get it done. That's, to me, a big thing where I haven't had to rely on this to pay my bills. I know people do out there, and it's a push, go, go, go. But yeah. I am a person that likes to have stuff that's released that sounds amazing if I can.
Yeah.
Not just the crap in, crap out stuff. And I would stress that to anybody that's starting, is like, make it your own and make it good. You know, make it the best you can. And if it's not good, like I'm dealing with a guy right now that I'm going to have to master a record for, and it's not ready. And I'm going to do what Charlie Pilzer from Airshow Mastering did for me back in 2001, when I took him a fully limited song that was mastered, and he goes, I can't do anything with this because it's already loud enough. Bring it back in a month. Talked me through the mix, and we made changes, and it came back, and it was so much better at the time for what it was, singer-songwriter stuff, you know, whatever. But that thing with Charlie Pilzer was a step that helped me out as a mixer over the years, to be like the positive person for people. At least try. I mean, obviously there's going to be those times, but keep that positivity and be happy, you know, like, it's too short to not be happy, you know?
Yeah. Music's too fun not to have fun making music.
Exactly. Even if you're an 80s wanker guitar player, just do it. So, yeah.
I love it, man. I love it, dude. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Rockstars, thank you for watching with us. Please let the Rockstars know, Chris, how can they find you? Where would you like them to go if they want to, you know, check out more? Of course, we have links in the show notes as well, but you can say it out loud if you want, if you've got social media or the website to check out. And if they're ready to just make their next hit record with you?
That'd be great. I'd love it. Reach out. I'm always online. If you guys hit me up, I generally reply. So Monument Sound on Facebook, monumentsound.com online, and hit me up on Chris Andrews on Facebook as well if you guys want to find me there. I'm getting hit up every single day now with stuff. I changed my profile photo, and apparently my son took this fun picture that I think I gave you for this thing. And ever since I added it, I'm literally getting like 30 people a day adding me. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, but you're a musician. Let's do it, whatever. So
Right, that's great.
I mainly use Facebook for marketing and connection type stuff, but monumentsound.com and love to catch up and chat. If anybody ever wants to do mix review stuff, I'm down for that too. So if people want me to listen to things, if I get time for it, I can absolutely try to help out. And
great offer. I think we have a lot of people that would love to do that. So Chris, thank you so much. And again, Rockstars, thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed this, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And more importantly, put a comment in below and let us know if you had any thoughts about stuff that we talked about. If you don't agree with something we said, we'd love to hear from you about that. If you do enjoy it, or if you have any questions, please do that. And we'll be sure to get back to it. Chris, thanks so much for hanging with us, man. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Yes, sir. One time we'll meet up. Sounds great.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, and SAE Institute. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes at iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com. Use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. And don't forget, you can start mixing right now with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in the show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. Also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way for you to help support this show. I'd also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for watching and listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.